12 using language. The speech we use to relate this chapter to is A Day Which Will Live in Infamy by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which was done on December 8, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor. This speech basically tells us what's going on in Pearl Harbor and what he plans to do to, basically get revenge. This speech was very important because it was the first time that that we were actually attacked on our own land. 4 battleships, 180 aircrafts, and over 2,000 lives were lost on the day before this. So it was a very serious topic. This was a good speech because he stayed on topic. He had a good, serious tone overall the whole thing, and he said everything without confusion. So here's the clip so you guys could see where we got our information from.
Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at solicitation of Japan, still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleague delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. And while this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of war or of armed attack. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu.
Okay, so that was a speech that FDR gave when he was president. Back to chapter 12. Every word has 2 basic meanings. We have denotative, which is a dictionary, what would say in the dictionary, the literal definition. In the connotative, which is actually the meaning that we get by our own emotions and how we feel about something. With the connotative meaning, that's where we get all the intensity of a word and how we relate to it. So that's what speakers use, because they want you to relate to what they're talking about. Who is afraid of dogs? Okay. Who likes dogs? Who really likes dogs? Okay, a lot more, right? So I'm going to use you 2 as examples. What do you think when you hear dog?
A dog?
Yeah, like when someone says the word dog, what pops in your head? A puppy, maybe like a soft, running around, nice thing, right? So that's your meaning. You have good feelings about that. But what do you think when you see a dog?
Oh, I get scared. I'm like, oh, better not get near me, and I'm just trying to find a way to get, away from the dog.
Right, so as she sees a puppy, nice cuddly thing, you see something with big teeth that could bite you, right?
Yeah.
So those are two different meanings. But in the definition, in the dictionary, all it says is that it's a four-legged animal. That's usually a pet. So that's how speakers get the intensity of a word. In this speech, he said, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States. He says sought to deceive. When people think of deceive, it's like deceitful, right? It's strong, like, oh my God, they're doing bad stuff. If he would have basically said, the Japanese government told us a little white lie, do you think people would be as upset? No, right? So he used those words to get the intensity of his audience. Using language accurately is as important to a speaker as, learning how to use a calculator is to an accountant, or learning how to play an instrument is to musicians. You have to know what you're saying, or else you won't get your point across. So when you're doing something like that, you have to make sure that all the words you're using are correct. Also in this speech, he says, I ask that Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire. He sounds really serious, and he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. But if at the end of that sentence he would have said, and the U.S. and Japanese empirical has went to war, everyone would have been like empirical is an empire. It sounds the same, but it means two completely different things. If he would have said that, just as an accident, he would have lost all of his respect, and no one would have took this speech seriously anymore.
Using familiar words. Using short, homely, common use and words. In this speech, the person uses recorded distant days and weeks, but those are words that we're familiar with. Choosing concrete words. Concrete words refer to tangible objects, like people, place, or things. The president in this speech uses Hawaii, Japan, and government. In this eliminating clutter, in this speech, I would say the president did not stutter or used. He was straightforward addressing to the nation with this speech he made. Using more short words that make more sense when you make a speech. Keep your language lean and lively, and avoid flabby phrases.
So the United States, like in 1940, so
This
like
is
19,
one great example of eliminating clutter. It's very important to eliminate clutter because this is how we sound when we're doing a speech.
So
It's an example.
In this speech, this was a very serious speech. I had to do like the what you call that thing? The vocabulary of the speech. Imagery. I used the attack yesterday on Hawaiian Islands have caused severe damage to American naval and military force. He isn't really talking about imagery because it's very straightforward, and he's just stating the facts that what's happening. I got a question. What do you guys think about when you think about bombs?
Mushroom clouds.
Really?
Invasion,
Okay.
explosion.
Death.
So that's basically what you got to use an image about bombs. That's what he's doing, stating the fact of what happened. The simile, there was really no similes in here because, like I said, it was a very straightforward speech. There's no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in greater danger. But I changed it to blinking our eyes to this is like turning our backs on family, because if they didn't take care of the problem, then the whole territory would have been damaged. And I couldn't find a metaphor, but metaphor is basically comparing two things without using like or as, the opposite of simile. Cliche, he didn't really talk about one because it was a serious matter. Rhythm, this speech had no rhythm. It was straightforward because he was declaring war. It was a serious matter, but if he was talking about a children's book, he could have used rhythm. He was talking to professional people. A parallelism is a similar arrangement of pair of series or related words. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, that's what he said right here. As Commander-in-Chief, Army and Navy. Yeah, that's parallelism. Repetition, he kept repeating last night and yesterday. He is addressing that last night he made an impact on people in the United States. He also repeated Japanese and attack. He wanted to make it clear, so now they're going to kill them. He highlighted the repetition last night. Alliteration, during the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to divide the United States by false statements and expression of hope for continued peace. He could have said the Japanese made us believe that there was peace, but really they wasn't at peace with us at all. And antitheses, there was no antitheses, but antitheses is contrasting ideas.
Okay, now my part was using language appropriately. Now there are 4 key elements to using language appropriately. One of them is using language appropriately to the occasion. So as you said in FDR's speech, he was addressing the situation and he was addressing everybody in the state, in the GOP, and he was addressing this the situation, and he was addressing everyone in the proper occasion. The second element is the audience. Obviously you're going to be talking to the audience. You're going to adjust to the audience. Like let's say for example, you're talking to a bunch of med students about Alzheimer's. You're not going to use the term Alzheimer's to a bunch of kindergartens who don't know what that means. So, you have to adjust to the audience. The third element is addressing, using your language appropriately to the topic. The topic in FDR's case was, the bombing on Pearl Harbor, and, the topic was Pearl Harbor. He's addressing that situation. He's addressing to the audience and to the occasion. And the last element, of course, is the speaker. When you're speaking in front of an audience, you obviously want to be, addressing, to the needs of others. You're not going to be ignorant and talking about a subject that are going to be sensitive to others. So, you want to speak up there, and you want to think clearly and do your best not to offend others, and speak appropriately, and don't ignore the needs of others. Now, when it comes to inclusive language means that it's language that that doesn't offend anyone or demean anyone in the case of race, religion, gender, disability, or sexual orientation. Now, some key ingredients you want to keep in mind when using inclusive language is that you don't want to use he to refer to both men and women. Like for example, using guys, you're like, hey, you guys. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid using he. A second ingredient would be avoiding stereotypes, such as jobs or social roles by gender. So when it comes to a man being in this position at a job, you don't want to, you want to avoid any kind of social stereotyping when it comes to gender roles and jobs. And last is you want to use your names, you want to use the names of the groups that you identify themselves. Like instead of saying you want to, you're like, okay, let's go get the space group. Don't call them the space group. You want to call them NASA. NASA is the group that actually sends astronauts, and they actually do a lot of research. And you don't want to call them the space group. They're actually given a name. They're called NASA. So, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You got to keep in mind the four appropriate: occasion, audience, topic, and speaker. And the 3 ingredients when using inclusive language is avoid using he, avoid using stereotypes, and use names to identify the groups.
Okay, so again on chapter 12, using language, just and I sum it up. we have to remember denotative language, denotative meaning, which is a dictionary definition, as well as connotative meaning. We have to use those two when we're doing a speech, so we remember how intense it's going to be. Also, we have to use our language accurately. Make sure you know what you're talking about, especially if you're going to teach it to somebody else. You have to make sure to use concrete words as well as abstract words depending on what the situation is. You have to use concrete words, something that everyone's going to know, and also abstract words, which is kind of, something that'll make people think more. You have to eliminate clutter. Try not to say try, and make your sentences nice and sweet. Don't say, in the month of December, on the 7th day of, of the year 1941. Just say the date, December 7th, 1941. Also, when you are telling a speech or writing something out, try to be creative if it's appropriate. Use similes, metaphors, repetition. If you want to make it strong, like we were saying, he said last night, Japanese attack over and over because he wanted the American people to, again, remember that this is what happened, and that's why we're going to take further action. Also, we have to remember to speak appropriately on the occasion. Don't stereotype in your speeches. Make it available for everyone, something that everyone could connect to. If anyone has any questions on their study guide of anything that they want us to go over again, we can go through that. Basically, there's questions and the answers on the back, so you could go through it through the chapters. It's pretty basic. I think we covered everything in our chapter.